Welcome to the Kolbecast, episode 297. Thank you for joining us. Today's guest will be familiar to many of our listeners. Dr. Ray Guarendi is a psychologist, TV and radio host, author, speaker, and homeschooling father of 10 adopted children. Always entertaining, Dr. Ray speaks with us about parenting, the advantages of homeschooling, and the issues that parents are facing today. We also speak to him about some of his recent books and what he's working on now. We hope that you'll enjoy the show.
Hi there, I'm Bonnie, Kolbe homeschooling mom of 4 lads and lasses, liturgical musician, popcorn, and podcast fanatic.
And this is Stephen, homeschooling father of 5 and director of development for Kolbe Academy.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Doing well. We're kind of coming off of our Christmas break as we're recording here, so still a little bit of some of my children who aren't normally around here, so different schedules and different things, which are lovely, but so it's a fun time.
So is it a bit of kind of easing back in, sort of, or did you kind of hit the ground running, and also you have this sort of alternate daily schedule still happening?
Yeah, kind of the latter, just fitting in the fun things, as we're up late last night playing a board game during the middle of the week. And it's like, what am I doing? I'm not a responsible person right now, but it was a lot of fun, and I won't have that opportunity next week. So it's worthwhile.
Yep. Worth doing. Yep. Well, here with us for our first recording of 2026 is someone who many of our listeners will recognize right away. Catholic clinical psychologist, author, speaker, TV and radio host, apologist, husband and father of 10, Dr. Ray Guarendi. Hello and welcome to the Kolbecast, Dr. Ray.
Hi, Bonnie. Hi, Stephen. Hey, Stephen, I want to tell you, staying up late like that, 60 is the new 40, but 9's the new midnight.
That's the case normally for me. So it takes a little bit of work to do that, but again, worthwhile.
Feeling it today.
Only live once, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Well, I figure a lot of our listeners are familiar with you, Dr. Ray, from your various appearances and offerings, which we want to hear more about. For those handful who have not yet encountered you, would you give us a bit of a backgrounder on yourself?
I'm a shrink. I've been shrinking for 45 years. I used to be like 6'9". I'm a daddy of 10. Originally, I spent all my time in the office. The first 10, 12, 15 years of my career, I just saw patients. I saw patients and I consulted. And then I kind of wrote my first book, and then a few people asked me to give a talk. And I thought, well, I guess I can give a talk, because I used to entertain in nightclubs. So I can do that, I guess. And then one thing led to giving more talks and more media, and then I get to be with people like you.
Well, I'm curious, would you take us back to your first forays into psychology? How'd you come to choose that?
Oh, yeah. In high school, the counselors said, well, you got pretty good grades in your math SAT, so why don't you go into engineering? And I thought, well, I always wanted to live in one of those little cabooses. I think that would be kind of cool. So I spent my first year in engineering and was moving along pretty good until I got a 31 in a physics 2 midterm. Now, Bonnie, Stephen, you can't recover from a 31. I don't care what you do. A 31 is going to take you down. So I called my mom and I said, Mom, I don't think engineering's for me. I'm going to major in psychology. And of course she said, rightfully so, what are you going to do with that? And I said, well, I'm going to say, do you want fries with that? That's what I'm going to say, second window, please. So I thought, okay, psychology, law school, that's a good blend. That's what I'll get into, psychology and law school. So I got my master's degree in a special program before law school, and I thought, this psychology stuff, it's got potential here. That was back before I realized how much the experts are undoing parenting in so much of our lives. And I went for a PhD, and I thought, now what do I do? Well, you go into a mental health center. That's what we did then. You went into a mental health center. People came in off the street. You interviewed them. You talked to them, and that's the way it was. And for 40 hours a week, I did that until my brain caught on fire. So at that point, I started branching out into consulting. I used to do a lot of media. I did Oprah. I was kind of her go-to guy before she hooked up with Phil. And then I did a lot of the national shows, all secular. Everything was secular. 90% was secular for probably, I don't know, 15 years until I decided this doesn't allow me to talk about the things I really want to talk about. I want to talk about the faith. I want to talk about that stuff. So ultimately, I got approached by a group that said, "Would you like to be on Catholic radio?" And I said, "Oh, I was so excited." I said, "Absolutely not." I didn't want to be. I was speaking about 100 times a year, and I didn't want to be tied to a microphone.
Mm.
My wife said, "Ray, give it 6 months." Now, my wife has never really been wrong in her advice to me. She was wrong one time, 41 years ago, and she's still paying for it. But other than that, I said, "All right, I'll give it a try." Well, guys, I was stunned by the power of Catholic media, and I believe you guys and folks like you are a force in bringing a lot of young people back to the church. And so I just figured, well, whether I want to be in Catholic media or whether I don't, I know one thing I don't, and I don't want to be standing before Christ saying, "Yeah, I had the opportunity to speak about your church, but hey, come on, Lord, I'm a busy guy. I got places to go, people to see. I'm making money. I don't want to do this." So that was 23 years ago.
Wow. I have a couple of questions, so I'm having a hard time choosing between them. I'll just launch into the first one. So, with all you have going on, your daily radio show, your clinical practice, your family, so many other things, like how do you make all that work? What is a typical, if there is a typical day or week, just how do you make it all work?
Bonnie, there's where you made your mistake. You said, "How did you make it all work?" How do you know it's working?
Well,
Okay.
very fair. True.
First of all, I'm not afraid of it not working. That's a key.
Okay.
I'm going to do what is presented before me. For example, I got up this morning, I had an interview with a guy from Britain. All right, he's talking about adoption. So my kids are adopted. We'll talk about that. And then I had you guys half an hour later. Well, in between this half an hour, I'm editing a book that I'm getting ready to publish, the manuscript. Okay, so I'm doing that. After I leave here, I'll go do the radio show. So as things just come before me, I'll say, "Okay, I'll do that, or I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that." Well, that can wait till tomorrow, or I don't have to do that till next week, kind of thing. And I've learned this is critical. For 50 years, I have lifted weights and done cardio training because I realize the organ has to function. I cannot do these things if I don't, in fact, make sure that I'm doing the things that keep me functioning at peak efficiency. That's key. That's key. If you guys would have wanted to do this show during a time when I go over to the weight room, I love you, but I would have told you can't do it. I got something else going.
I think there's a lot to be learned from that in application to our lives as homeschooling families, which we'll get into here, as I'm sure as the conversation unfolds. Do you have any particular saints or prayers that are especially meaningful to you as you approach your work?
Saint Peregrine. Saint Peregrine is the patron saint of cancer sufferers. And as I get older, there are more and more people in my life who right now are seriously struggling with a cancer diagnosis. And I know people whose children are struggling and young children, and it breaks my heart. It just flat out breaks my heart. And I pray a lot to Saint Peregrine.
Okay. So I know you to be a homeschooling family. What kind of stands out in your mind, memories of your homeschooling experience, your family's homeschooling experience? Could be happy, cautionary, a mix of both, something else.
Well, I will say that I want to claim that I helped my wife homeschool because I remember one time one of the kids dropped a pencil. And I told the brother, I said, "Hey, pick that up for your brother." So, see, I do my part. I did my part of the homeschool. And my wife said, "Well, Ray, how can I homeschool?" She said, I said, "Honey, I know your education only went to the fourth grade, but here's what you do. You stay 1 week ahead in the answer book. That's all. You got the answer book, so you can homeschool." Actually, the truth is this. when she was on her way to the Catholic Church, she came to me and she said, I want to homeschool. At that time, I was consulting to some school districts. And I said, how is that going to look? So here's this guy going into these public schools and his wife homeschools. I said, I'm reluctant. And so one of the rules of homeschooling is if you don't have both parents somewhat on the same wavelength, you can't do it. So she waited and she knew this was going to happen. She's a treacherous, sneaky woman. My son was in the second grade, my daughter was in the first, and they were coming home with sexual terms and lack of innocence that was just frying me out. I was watching their innocence be scraped off of them like a belt sander scrapes stuff off of paint. And I told my wife, I said, honey, you want to homeschool? We homeschool. And it for us was the absolute best decision we made as parents. I used to say this, homeschooling's one option, throw it in the hopper. I now say, if you want to do it, and you can do it, and it's a lot easier now than it was then. There's co-ops and there's the internet. There's all kinds of ways to help homeschooling. Do it. Because if your main concern is to raise a kid who embraces the Lord as he gets older, you raise the odds big time if you are the main source in their upbringing as opposed to 27 other fourth graders and opposed to whatever culture they're going to hear in that public school, or sometimes, sadly, even in the Catholic schools. So, yes, it was a wonderful thing. My wife says now, she said, I never, ever would have had the relationship I have with my kids without homeschooling. Yeah, they come home at 4 o'clock, they do their homework, or if they had some after school activity, we get their homework in, and then they go to bed at 8 o'clock. So during the week, we'd see them about an hour. And in the morning, you do the morning battle trying to get him off to school in time. It was just something that we were able to do, and it turned out wonderful for us. And interestingly enough, and I will tell this to anybody listening who's nervous, especially when husbands are nervous about this, homeschoolers achieve at the 85th percentile on achievement tests. The 50th percentile is the norm. Homeschoolers, their norm is the 85th percentile. Two of my older children got perfect scores on their ACTs. And this was at the hands of their mother's instruction.
Actually, I was having a discussion with one of my daughters over break, and just how I think it's so much harder as a parent. We've homeschooled all of our kids. I'm similar. Like
you had him pick up the pencil too?
Yeah, I had him pick up the pencil as well. But there you're building the relationships. It's efficient from a schooling standpoint, but you're there together. You're involved. You're working together. I just think I would struggle if, in that scenario that you just getting the kids up, they're off to school, encountering things which I'm going to have to try to work against in our house, as far as, things they're exposed to, all of the stuff that goes in school. I went to public school myself when I was way back in the day.
Wasn't it a one-room schoolhouse then, Steve?
I did go to the last wood-framed schoolhouse in Wisconsin at the time. So
did you have to go to the bathroom outside?
Fortunately not, but it was close. It was close. Yeah, but I've seen families do it, through all sorts of different backgrounds. But I think it's really a challenge as a parent to have to fight all of that and spend the time to develop the relationships with your kids. It's been the best thing for me ever, I love my kids. I love my family. And I don't know how that would have worked without homeschooling myself. But
well, homeschoolers get nonsense thrown at them. How are they going to be socialized? Which is absurd, because the research says that homeschoolers are better socialized than their peer counterparts. They have more solid self-images. They are more comfortable across the age spectrum. They get better grades. They volunteer more. So that's nonsense. Okay. And what is socialization? If that's teaching morals and social skills, that's up to the parents. That's not up to a group of 22 fourth graders. Okay, that's the first thing. Another thing is, well, okay, but it's just weird. Well, wait a minute. Public schooling is not that old. Public schooling is about 150 years old. So in human history, public schooling is the oddity. Homeschooling or some type of parent or close cropped schooling was the norm. That's another thing. And a third thing is, well, you can't protect them forever. You're not trying to protect them forever. You're just trying to give them a little more childhood in a culture that wants to strip their childhood by age 8.
One of the things about schooling that always strikes me is if we are trying to raise our children to have a deep relationship with our Lord, like you talked about, 24 fourth grade students. I think there are teachers who can avoid this, but there's a natural inclination to discover that it's the kids who act in a certain way, achieve a certain amount, that the attention and the love of this one teacher trying to manage 24 kids. So even like from like an attachment sort of thing, to me, it seems like there's an ingrained sort of corruption of the value you have as a person and loving each other just as people are, with all of their flaws, with all of their achievements too. But I think that to me always seemed like a bit of a something to overcome that also has to be overcome in a public school situation. Maybe not for everybody, but that was my experience.
I don't want to send this message to your listeners. And we're not saying you can't raise great kids through public schools and Catholic schools. I'm not saying
Right.
any such thing.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
But what I am saying is if you wish to homeschool for the kinds of reasons we're talking about, then do not be buffaloed and bullied by the nonsense stopping you. That's the difference here. I know very, very few homeschooling parents who say, I totally regret that I homeschooled. I know quite a few who said, I just don't like what happened to my kids as they got socialized through the peer group into high school. And again, you can raise great kids, and some kids are impervious. You know, we as two of my kids got older, we sent them on to high school. The first 8 got homeschooled through high school. One of them navigated high school very well. He was confident, he was kind of a leader, he wasn't going to be influenced. The other one we had to pull out by the middle of her sophomore year because she was just getting pulled into every putrid kind of peer group attachment. We had to pull her out. She couldn't handle it. He did.
I think one of the things that I love that you're talking about here is when you're homeschooling, you recognize that you do have that choice. You know, this is right for this child to go through high school. This is not right for this child, and I can do something about it. I don't, like you said, you don't have to just go along but when you've recognized that you have um, that ability to just to make those decisions for your children, it's really helpful.
Well, you're looking at logistics. I don't know the exact percentage of one parent full time staying home, but it's got to be under 10 or 12%. It's got to be.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you're going to try to do something like homeschooling, even if you get involved in co-ops or things like that, it's still a minority of parents who
absolutely.
logistically are able to do this. And unfortunately, the financial things in our culture and all of that have worked against one parent staying at home.
Again, with discussions with my older children over the holidays, I think it's even gotten harder for them. I mean, as they're graduating from school, trying to make a living, getting married, having children, thinking about buying a house or finding a house. Now, it's with one income, it's it's difficult. It's really difficult.
My oldest son is an engineer and he makes good money, but he lives in a state that's very expensive. And his wife stays home to homeschool the 3 kids. He has not been able to save up money. He's in his late 30s. He has not been able to save up enough money yet to put down a down payment on a house, especially not there. He'd have to move.
Right.
Mm. Also well said. There's so many kind of bolsters to the confidence and resolve of those of us who have embarked on this path. That's one of the many things I appreciate about you, Dr. Ray, is the way you were able to speak just now, like the way you were able to build up and encourage homeschooling families, not at the expense of the decisions that families who've made other decisions have made and have other arrangements. I appreciate that a lot. And I also appreciate your, there are constant reminders, like you're the parent, you can make the decisions. And that's such an important counterpoint to sort of the prevailing message that not prevailing, but a very loud message to the opposite of that. And so that's one of the things that I appreciate a lot. And that comes through in your speaking events and TV and radio and books. How many books do you have out at this point? You got another one in the works.
19.
19. Yeah.
And my wife said, Ray, you need to read more. And I told her last night, I said, well, honey, I just, in one night, I finished a 212-page book. And that's a lot of coloring. It really is. My hand was kind of cramping up and that. Bonnie, I've become convinced over the years. My first book was a book titled You're a Better Parent Than You Think. I had no chance of getting that book published. I was a 28-year-old psychologist in a mental health center who had never written anything. And apparently some big New York publisher picked it up because apparently it resonated with them. Here are these upscale editors, these in New York, well-educated parents, and they were neurotic. They were overthinking, overanalyzing, over-talking, over-interpreting, over-psychologizing, and their parenting was becoming a big enlightened formula. And the premise of the book was, settle down here, you're the parent, and we're going to teach you how to not get buffeted around by all these expert theories. Well, since then, I've become even more convinced that what's happening out there in parenting, especially parents like yourselves, who are really just trying to be parents who are raising kids who seek God, the experts have ruined you. They've got so many nonsense theories. The latest one is gentle parenting. Oh, heck, gentle parenting is great for my business because they come in my office after doing their several years of gentle parenting and say, I can't stand this 6-year-old. I go, yeah, that's right. Because gentle parenting is flawed. It's based on all kinds of flawed premises that all sound wonderful on paper until they run up against a real child. And so in that sense, much of the stuff I've been written and talked about is trying to put authority back in the hands of parents.
Well, that in your latest book from Sophia, Drama-Free Discipline, that there are a series of scenarios that Steve and I were talking about this as we were preparing for our conversation with you. Very clever. I love the names that you come up with. Do you want to tell us a bit about Drama-Free Discipline?
I had a PhD psychologist come to my office. And she was very intelligent, very bright, very educated. She knew all the psychological enlightened approaches. And her 5-year-old was eating her for lunch. And so as we talked about how to get her back in charge, she said to me, boy, it'd be nice if you could come to my house and just kind of sit and observe me interacting with little Conan over here. I said, I can do that. I can do that. So I did. And I watched her. I saw her in action, and I could give her immediate feedback on the kinds of things she was saying, what she was doing, what she was allowing, all of that. That gave me the idea for drama-free discipline years later. I thought, all right, I'm going to draw up 18 of the most common discipline scenarios. Most of the time, the stuff that parents wrestle with is the same stuff. It's disrespect, it's sibling quibbling, it's homework hassles, it's bedtime bad times, meal ordeals, it's defiance. It's just the same stuff. So I wrote actual scenarios between parent and kid, parent and grandparent, parent and spouse. And then I step into the scene like I did with this woman. I step into the scene and then I coach them through this and say, well, notice how she said that. What do you think his response was going to be when she said that? Do you think he was going to say, why, thank you, mother. You make such perfect sense. Of course. That's why you're the parent and I'm the child. And then I'll say something like, no, I just wrote that. No real kid would say that. Here's what he said instead. And then I talk about that. And by the end, I try to talk the parent out of trouble.
Yeah. I also appreciated the underscore of like this sort of confidence that you have in parents as well. Like you're a human being yourself, the parent. So how can we expect to get it perfectly every time? All these scenarios, like we can go back and critique them after they've happened and have the do-overs. Many of your scenes feature some do-overs, right? So, when they unfold in real time, we're not going to get it right every single time. So I appreciated that as well.
Bonnie, you actually read the book?
What do you know?
Holy mackerel, you do look smarter. You didn't used to look that smart.
Like that?
I don't remember where I learned it, but I remember saying it didn't need to happen very often, but going on your point, Dr. Ray, I remember saying at one point to one of my children, nobody speaks to my wife that way. She's my wife first, and I mean, and then mother of my children, of course, but that seemed to make an impact on them even as a child, that, oh wait, this is not just somebody I can abuse. This is, it seemed to make a difference when I said that to one of my children at one point.
Well, I kind of did something similar, Stephen, and it didn't work out too well. I said to one of the kids, nobody speaks to my wife that way except me. So I probably should have left out that except me part.
Even if it happens at times, still probably best to leave that off.
That actually kind of draws a parallel. Well, I don't know what the right wording is necessarily, but it gets me thinking about your other very recent book, How to Get Along with Almost Everybody, also published by Sophia. So I'm impressed you had 2 out in 1 year, right? So some of these aspects of getting along relationally come into play, I think, every day in a homeschooling household, in any household, of course, perhaps on a different pitch or intensity level of people who are together all day, every day. So some of these scenarios you're describing as well kind of make a nice link to that book. Do you want to say a few words about that?
Well, I should a little nervous about saying this because you guys were awful kind to ask me on the podcast here, but on the back of the book, the title is How to Get Along with Almost Everybody. On the back of the book, Stephen's picture is right above almost. Okay. And I told the publisher, I said, don't do that. They said, we'll change it in the second printing. I said, okay. I wrote that book because there's a thing in the book I call the law of social proximity. It's a law I made up, but it basically means the people closest to us can drive us the most crazy. I mean, they can frustrate us the most, they can hurt us the most, they can upset us the most, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That includes kids. So I talk about how to not get so distressed over somebody doing something that they repeatedly do. That's the number one I don't want to say destroyer, that's too hard, rattler of relationships, which is he's critical. Why does he have to be critical? It seems like, if I had to count all the times he's been critical in the 14 years I've known him, it's got to be 250 times. And in the book, I talk about why does number 250 bother you as much as number 10? Well, it does because of the accumulation. I said, no, it should go the other way. When somebody's done it 250 times, you realize that's who they are. That's what they do. That's their style. It may not have anything to do with you. So 250 should not have the credibility that number 10 did. Number 10, you were still starting to struggle with, well, wait a minute, maybe I am that way, or maybe they have a good point. But at number 250, you should start to think, this isn't going to bother me because I know this is what my mother-in-law does. She's constantly commenting about my motherhood for the last 12 years. Why is it still bothering you? Because I don't like it. Well, you don't have to like it. But why is it still bothering you? Because she shouldn't do it. Well, I know she shouldn't do it, but why is it still bothering you? Because I don't deserve that. I know you don't deserve that, but why is it still bothering you? See, they can't accept that that's what that person does. And as a result, to get along with them, you got to recognize that's what they do. And it's my husband's mother, so I can't write her out of my life.
I'm taking a few clinical mental health counseling courses in a master's program over the last
Uh-oh, don't
year.
let it mess you up, Stephen, please.
It's at UMary, so it's a Newman
Okay.
Guide school. So I think at least so far it's been good. But that's one of the things actually that's helped is that they keep mentioning like even people coming to counseling don't always want you to fix them in certain ways. They've got a problem they're trying to work out. But I've since doing that, I've realized in conversations like in the family, it's like, oh, this person doesn't want me to correct them to do this thing at this point. They're expressing a thought, a concern, a problem, and I like to jump in and have an argument about things. And it's like, well, that's not what this is about right now. So just letting those things go and saying they don't want to be corrected. It's not going to do any good to even confront them and try to fix this
Because
problem.
they don't think they're wrong.
They don't think they're wrong, right? So yeah,
What are you going to correct? You
yeah.
know, you think they're wrong or they're misguided, but they don't.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
sure. I call it read the cues. When people try to correct or clear the air or share their feelings or tell someone how their behavior affects them, if the first couple of times fails, give it up, Louis. Let it go. Your mother-in-law is not going to accept that she makes those remarks and she shouldn't. In her mind, she's right in making those remarks. Or in her mind, she's not saying anything bad. Or in her mind, she's just trying to help. And you're too sensitive. So you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. I tell this to grandparents. Grandmothers are told on your daughter-in-law's wedding day, there's three pieces of advice: sit up, shut up, and wear beige. And that's good advice for grandparents. If that young parent doesn't ask your advice, preferably with something notarized from your attorney, shut your mouth. My wife and I, of course, have raised 10 children. I'm a shrink. It's what I do for a living. We do not say one parenting word to the parents of our 10 grandchildren unless they come to us and say, hey, Dad, hey, Mom, what do you think about this? Now, we have one child who's never asked us. And we got another child who says, hey, Dad, if you see us doing anything wrong, tell us. That's really weird. You don't get too many of those. Uh, but that's rule. That's a rule I tell grandparents. And you know the worst, Bonnie, the worst potential for friction is mother-in-law, daughter-in-law. That is the number one area where if there's going to be friction and somebody's going to be denied to see the grandkids or somebody's going to have a strained relationship, it's going to be mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, followed by mother-daughter.
Interesting.
So the timing of these two books release, is that intentional or is it like a sort of a function of the publishing process?
Here's what happened. They were about 9 months apart, something like that. How to Get Along with Almost Everybody was a brand new book. I completely wrote it from scratch. Drama-Free Discipline is a revision of a book that I wrote probably 12, 13, 14 years ago. So it was released under a different cover with a kind of a different approach. But it's a revision. So that allowed me to get it out quicker. If I would have had to have rewritten a new book, it would take probably a year and a half between books. Like right now, I'm working on a book on anxiety. It's at the manuscript is at the publishers, so it's sitting there. So while it is sitting there, I'm working on another book. So I learned the secret to writing a lot of books. You can't worry about them being very good. You go for quality, it really slows you down. Hope your listeners don't take me to heart on that one.
Yeah. I was thinking, well, maybe don't go for perfection, like the one book. Iterate. This might be a sidetrack, but as you're talking about these different things, I was kind of wondering what the problems are in parenting that you've over the many years that you've been working with people. What have you seen a dramatic shift in the problems, or is it pretty much just the same thing, just different iterations of things?
15 years ago, I never saw one single parent come in asking about their kid wanting to change their gender identity. Not one. Now I can't believe how common it has become. That's the first thing. Same sex attraction, same thing. Um, 15 years ago, yeah, you got a few here and there. Now it's just exploded. Okay, this is definitely a social phenomenon, and I hope that my profession ultimately comes to realize that. Second thing I see a lot of, an awful lot of, more so probably than before, defiance. Just flat out uncooperative, hitting parents, kicking parents, 9-year-olds throwing prolonged fits that used to be the bailiwick of 2-year-olds, 15-year-olds looking at their parents like I hate your guts. And there's two factors here, I think. One, well, there's many factors, but a couple of the big ones are the culture is really telling kids, especially the older kids, that your parents who are trying to raise you in a God-seeking home, they're just out of touch. They're just flat out of touch. And you're the only one age 14 who doesn't have a smartphone. Your parents are Neanderthal throwbacks, and you are totally within your rights to get around them, sneak around them, do what you have to do, be relentless. Okay, that's one. So the messages of the culture. The other one is that parents are not as confident. They are just not as confident and as authoritative. All the questions I get from parents oftentimes have an unspoken, am I doing the right thing? And I'll say, well, wait, you're the parent. If you don't want TV during the week, isn't that your decision? Well, I mean, I know we're the only ones in our group that don't allow TV during the week. And I know some of the experts talk about that if we do that, the kids are going to be resentful because they won't be able to talk with their peers about what the popular programs are. I mean, all this second guessing going on all over the place, especially among good parents. The bad parents don't care. They're not going to read one of my books. It's the good parents who are trying to raise the kids right. And they figure all these experts got letters after their names, and they're going to tell them how to talk and how to reason and how to use iMessages, not you messages, and win-win scenarios and enlightened psychological techniques. And then the kid will just turn out exactly the way you wanted him to. And when he doesn't, obviously, mother, you were a failure. You blew it, mother. Don't you understand that? Your kids left the church. That's your fault. You didn't do it right. You should have prayed the rosary in Aramaic, kneeling on broken glass while you levitated. That's what you should have done. No, you prayed the rosary on the couch. Spiritual sloppiness.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
Mhm. Pretty common phrase. I want them to feel heard. And I find myself sometimes thinking, okay, I hear you. It doesn't necessarily mean I agree with you or we're going to do what you want necessarily. Are you seeing the same thing?
I hear a lot of the experts say let children express themselves. You don't want to stifle their viewpoint or their feelings. I agree with that. However, expressing yourself respectfully. If you don't, you lose your ability to respect or express yourself. That's one. If you say, I want them to understand, I want them to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. A 14-year-old will be sitting in my office and the parent will say, she just doesn't get it. She just accuses us. She doesn't realize what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. So I'll turn to the teen and I'll say, would you please tell your mother why you think she does what she does? And the kid will turn and express it more articulately than I could. She wants us to grow up because she realizes this is the best way to live and that I'm too young. And she gives this perfect explanation. And then after the mother, I revive her with smelling salts from the floor after she gets up. The mother will say, but, well, she understands. I go, yeah, she understands. She doesn't agree. That's as simple as that. Oh, yeah, she understands your reasoning for her not having a smartphone. She doesn't agree with it at all. Okay, so she's going to fight you every step of the way. You think that just because she understands, she's going to agree. How's that follow? Okay, I can understand why people think that killing a baby in a womb is a choice. I can understand it. I can hear their reasoning and their flawed logic. I can understand it. I don't agree at all. Same thing with kids. You can't expect kids to understand what you're doing. And if you parent like they've got to understand, you in big trouble. They're going to understand someday. And that's what you're shooting for.
I, I'm not sure if we're normal or not in our family here, but it seems like we've tried to always be consistent. So this might speak some, and I don't think it's contrary, but we always try to have given explanations for here's the reason why we do these things. So not always like when they're 2 years old or whatever, but it seems like over the years since we've been consistent with that, that we don't have arbitrary rules. We do things because we've thought about them and we think this is the best thing. That we haven't had really issues as the kids have grown up. I mean, there's disagreements at times or whatever, but they're respectful of, like you said, I may not agree with that. I think I should be able to do this or I should have this, but you're the parents. You've thought this out. You're not being arbitrary or hurtful. This is just what you think and you make the rules. So, oh wow, it seems I don't know if I'm fair with my kids thinking that way, but we haven't had those sorts of problems though. And I'm often
I
thinking,
would think I would think part of it, Stephen, would be the overall tenor of your house. I mean, you're loving parents with good discipline and high morals and heavy involvement in your children's life. So all of that enters into them understanding why you do what you do. Here's where I would add the qualifier. Explain a rule or an expectation, usually when it's a new one. So she comes to you and she says, well, why can't I go to the mall? I mean, my boyfriend Snake is a really nice guy, and his friend Chain, I like him. Okay, so you explain. But most of the stuff, for example, let's say you got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they are prone to torment each other. Well, they've long since known you don't torment your brother. You don't have to explain every single time. Now, how do you think he feels when you do that? Do you think he appreciates that? One of these days you're going to realize that that's your best friend. You do that over and over again. And the kids hear blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
Charlie
yeah,
Brown. Wah, 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 wah,
yes,
wah, wah.
yeah,
I tell parents, when this stuff is over and over old stuff, quit explaining. They've long since known. If it's new stuff, then yeah, okay, you say, here's why we decided this. And that especially happens as they get older because they want more freedoms.
right,
And
right.
that tug and pull between what you want and what they want is there. And it's there with new stuff. Well, why can't I drive when I'm 16? Okay, so you've explained it. So tomorrow you get the same thing. I can't see why I can't drive when I'm 16. Okay, so you explain it again. At some point, and this is, I think I talk about this in the book, Bonnie.
Yeah.
At some point, you say, you know what? I gave you my reasons. You don't like them. You don't accept them. I don't know what else to tell you. Because otherwise, when they keep asking for explanations after you've explained yourself, they don't want an explanation. They want to argue.
All right. How about a couple of suggestions for homeschooling families? I'm thinking of families who are getting started on homeschooling from the get-go. So very young children getting started. First child is, like I said, from the get-go. Those families, and then families who are coming to homeschooling from some other school situation, brick and mortar, basically. So what would you say to each of those sets of folks?
The number one reason that parents who begin homeschooling or who wish they could begin homeschooling and don't is discipline. They believe they can't get cooperation from the children because this is play school. If I send them to school, they're going to listen to the teacher. but they don't listen to me. And there's an irony in that, Bonnie. The irony is that the parent has 20 times the authority that a teacher has. A teacher can't make a kid stand in a corner. A teacher can't make a kid write an essay of apology. A teacher can't say, well, you're going to get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich rather than what you wanted for lunch. A teacher can't do any of that. A parent controls the whole environment. So that's the irony. The parent has way more authority than the teacher, but parents don't think they do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is parents will say, I can't get them to cooperate. Well, here's a simple rule, worked very well for us. Schoolwork has to be completed before any privileges begin. That's the rule. No privileges. You can't go outside. You can't watch TV. You can't do anything. You can't even read. School comes first. Third thing, the average homeschooling parent will tell you, especially with the little kids, you can get this done in about an hour or two. This is not a 6.5-hour project here. And even with the older ones, the day is short. You can be done by 1 or 2 o'clock. And there's no homework because you did it all here at the table or wherever. And that's critical. I think they think that this is just going to be some protracted process that's going to last 9 hours. It's not. It's not at all. And as long as the kids know, say, for example, if one of my kids, I had a daughter who had some learning problems. So she had some arithmetic problems. And of course, she was sitting there staring at the page for, I had to be close to 22 days, something like that. I don't know. It all blurred. And so the doorbell rang, and it was the pizza delivery. She jumps up, pizza, pizza. And we looked at her, we said, Jojo, honey, you don't get any pizza. You just been staring at your math problems, and we know you can do that. You just don't want to do it. You're just kind of straying off. And she looked at us like, what? And then it was a miracle. Yeah, it was a miracle. Those math problems were done in 2 minutes. It was our pizza with pepperoni therapy. But that was the rule. Jojo, you're going to eat later and you're not getting pizza.
All right. And then the last one I have for you for now is making course corrections, especially for kind of older kids, adolescents, when you recognize, all right, how well is this working for us? Not very. So we need to make some course corrections here. And of course, that kind of invites that, well, it was okay before, or why are we changing this now, or that sort of thing. So how do you coach parents through a course correction of a sort of garden variety? Not like significant, but yeah.
Well, for example, a common course correction is I gave my 11-year-old a smartphone. Stupidest thing I ever did. I want to take it back. Now, that's a major course correction, and that kid's going to act like you took her kidney out. Okay? So parenting is full of course corrections. That's the way it is. You're going to, as you go along, reassess. There's no way around that. You're going to say, I made this decision. That was really dumb. I sent her to that sleepover, and I thought I knew that parent. And I can't believe the movie they watched. So from now on, all sleepovers are going to be much more meticulously vetted. Okay, so you make these course corrections. And the kid challenges it. It was okay before. Yeah, I know. I thought it was too. But I realized it wasn't. It's not working out for you. And my concern is you, not me. I'm not doing this for my sake. I'm doing it for yours. Now, are they going to buy that? Of course not. They're not going to go, oh, why, thank you. Thank you, mother, to be concerned about my sake over yours. Thank you so much. I didn't realize that. That's not going to happen. But you explained yourself. You did your part. The course correction, I always tell parents, if you're going to make a course correction, make it because in your judgment, your original decision wasn't that good. Don't make it because you're getting badgered. Don't make it because the kid seems unhappy about it. Don't make it because the kid tried to sabotage it. Don't make it because the kid is getting sneaky and deceptive. When we took a smartphone away from our 16-year-old daughter because she was just not handling it well at all, her friends gave her 5 more smartphones because the view was, your parents are psycho. And we're going to tell you your parents are psycho. And here's my old smartphone. And of course, ultimately, we discovered all 5 phones. And was that a testy period of time with her? Oh, absolutely. I wanted her out of the house, to tell you the truth. It was getting so bad. But she's 26 now, and she's and my wife are absolutely best friends. And she looks back at it and goes, "Boy, I was pretty bad, wasn't I?" I go, "Yeah, Lizzie, you were."
Mm. And hopefully at some point there will be some sort of secondary lesson if they find themselves in similar circumstances. Like, I'm going to need to change something here. And I've been through this before on the other side of it.
My daughter's pregnant, and she found out she's going to have a girl. And she said, "Oh no, oh no, I know what I was like." And
Aw.
she's got my genetics. Oh.
Aw. No guarantee of that, of course. I know we're getting close to the time that we asked of you, Dr. Ray. It's been great visiting with you. I want to make sure folks know where to go from here. So drray.com is your website. Is that where you like to send folks? Do you have other places as well?
You can go there and you'll get a signed copy and you'll get them discounted. So, more than welcome.
Okay. We'll have that link in our show notes. Links to both the books we mentioned today, some other relevant links, including some related Kolbecast episodes that come to mind as we've been visiting. Stephen, you have anything further for Dr. Ray?
This is just fantastic. I was looking forward to this, and it didn't disappoint. So,
Yes.
Stephen, you dozed off twice.
wow. I said I was up late playing a board game. I needed a little
stayed
nap.
until 9:30.
9:30. I have to have a nap if I do that too.
You know what? I used to play the organ in supper clubs, and we didn't start until 9 o'clock, and we usually finished around 1 or 2. And then at that time, I'd say, "Okay, where are we going to breakfast?"
Mhm.
Well, now I don't know if I could even make it to 9 o'clock to start.
Funny. Okay, Dr. Ray, it sure has been a real gift to get to visit with you today. Thanks for coming to visit with us here on the Kolbecast.
Anytime, guys. My pleasure.
Subscribe to the Kolbecast on your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss an episode. And let us know how we're doing by leaving a rating or a review. And as always, feel free to email us at podcast@kolbe.org.
Mary, our Mother, pray for us. St. Maximilian Kolbe, St. Ignatius of Loyola, Holy Saints and Angels, pray for us. Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam.